Though he had overseen the production of some of the biggest action movies of the 1980s, films like Predator, Lethal Weapon, and Die Hard, the louder-than-life film producer Joel Silver faced an atmosphere in the early 90s in which big testosterone-fueled blockbusters were considered passé. Silver himself dealt with a few box office disappointments like Hudson Hawk and Ricochet, and in the summer of 1993, one of the most ambitious action movies ever made, Last Action Hero, was handily trounced by Jurassic Park, a movie Silver decried for being far too safe and audience-friendly. But while Spielberg's dinosaurs were busy crushing Arnold Schwarzenegger, Silver was busy trying to prove a point: that his next movie, which starred none other than Schwarzenegger's public nemesis Sylvester Stallone, was going to cut through the politically correct nonsense of 90s Hollywood and give audiences the bombastic entertainment they were missing.
It is 2032, and crime is a thing of the past in the utopian city of San Angeles, where the populace has been lulled into obedience by strict obscenity laws, a culture of social distancing, mass surveillance, and the total repression of dissent. However, the peace is shattered when Simon Phoenix, a notorious criminal from the late 20th century, escapes from cryocontainment and goes on a killing spree. There is only one man who can stop him: John Spartan, the brutal police officer who took him down the first time and was placed in cryo-prison for his effort. With these two relics of a violent past making war in the streets, can San Angeles survive, or will its citizens finally wake up and join the fight?
Fresh out of college, Peter Lenkov got a job in Hollywood as a production assistant, and immediately began work on writing several screenplays. The radio in his car was broken, so he would use a busted boombox chained to the back seat with the police's Ghost in the Machine stuck inside as the only music he could listen to. And he was particularly entranced by the song Demolition Man. Inspired by Lethal Weapon and the urban legend of Walt Disney being cryogenically frozen, Lenkov wrote the first screenplay for a movie he called Demolition Man. The script garnered enough interest at Warner Brothers that Daniel Waters, the award-winning writer of Heathers and Batman Returns, was brought in to do a full rewrite. Waters added a more satirical tone to Lenkov's story, and his changes were so dramatic that the two writers were forced into arbitration at the WGA to determine credit. Other writers were involved as well, including Craig Sheffer and Jonathan Lemkin, but suffice it to say it was a Gordian knot that no one seemed able to untie. It was at this point that Joel Silver, who had previously worked with Waters on Hudson Hawk and the Adventures of Ford Fairlane, got involved and split the knot with his sword of considerable cash thrown at all parties involved. Silver then hired Marco Brambilla to direct, based on the strength of a few Nike and Pepsi commercials and the recommendation of David Fincher. Brambilla had never directed a feature film before, much less a big-budget spectacle like this, but Silver remained actively involved throughout production to help out. Thus, on an initial budget of $45 million, Demolition Man was underway by early 1993. At first, Silver tried to turn Demolition Man into a vehicle for both Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme, but as you might be able to guess, neither actor wanted to play the villain against the other, and the argument over who would get to be the hero, John Spartan, escalated to the point that both men walked away from the project. So, instead, they cast Sylvester Stallone, who was wary of the project because he was in the midst of trying to shed his action hero persona. Stallone had tried to veer towards comedy with movies like Oscar and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, both of which bombed at the box office. Although personally, I think Oscar is criminally underrated.
Dr. Poole!
Dr. Poole?
Hello? Get back in the room!
Demolition Man, though, allowed him to flex his comedic muscles a little while still playing to his action hero strengths. He also got paid a cool $10 million for it. To play the villain, Simon Phoenix, Stallone wanted Jackie Chan, but Chan turned it down because he didn't want to contribute to the trend of Asian actors coming to America and being typecast as bad guys. Jackie does get a shout-out in the final film, though.
Where the hell did you learn to kick like that?
Jackie Chan movies?
They then turned to Wesley Snipes, who had a martial arts background and had had success in action movies like Passenger 57. Snipes, though, turned them down multiple times, so with time running out, Brambilla and Silver paid him a personal visit on the set of his current movie at the time, Rising Sun, and finally convinced him to sign on for a $4 million paycheck. The movie did give Snipes an opportunity to show off his martial arts skills, but he was forced to slow down some of his movements to suit the speed of the camera and to match the more brawny fighting style of Sylvester Stallone. The two lead actors got along really well, but the same could not be said of the actor playing Dr. Cocteau, the true antagonist of the picture. Nigel Hawthorne was an Olivier Award-winning stage actor who was vying to reprise his stage role as King George III for the film version of The Madness of King George, believing that he had to prove he could provide a commanding performance in a feature film before they'd give him the role. Why he chose Demolition Man to do that is beyond me, especially since he reportedly hated the experience and didn't get along with either of the main actors, but he does lend a degree of gravitas to a movie that is sorely lacking it. The female lead, Lenina Huxley, whose name is made up of two Brave New World references, was given to Lori Petty. She was fired 2 or 3 days into filming, though, for quote-unquote creative differences, and replaced by a lesser-known Sandra Bullock, who only had a handful of credits to her name and who had no time to prepare for the part. Of all the actors in the entire movie, Bullock would prove to be the breakout star, and it would lead to a string of action movies in its wake, including the mega-successful Speed and the 1995 cyber film The Net, wink wink nudge nudge. Other actors worth noting are Bullock's future Miss Congeniality co-star Benjamin Bratt as Garcia, the incomparable Dennis Leary as Edgar Friendly, a character that was rewritten specifically for the actor.
I want to smoke a Cuban cigar the size of Cincinnati in the non-smoking section. I want to run through the streets naked with green jello all over my body reading Playboy magazine. Why? Because I suddenly might feel the need to, okay, pal?
Shawshank's Bob Gunton as Chief Earl, Glenn Shaddix as Bob.
I am an excellent associate, sir.
Lethal Weapon's Steve Kahan as Captain Healy, Bill Cobbs as Zachary Lamb, whose death scene at the hands of Simon Phoenix wound up on the cutting room floor, Die Hard and Free Jack's Grand Bush as the younger Lamb, an uncredited Rob Schneider as Irwin.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the emergency line of the San Angeles Police Department. If you prefer an automated response, press 1 now.
A blink and you'll miss him Jesse Ventura as one of Phoenix's cryocons, Penthouse's 1992 Pet of the Year Brandy Ledford in a scene I can't show on YouTube, Adrienne Barbeau as the voice of the computer,
Murder, death, kill, murder, death, kill.
Stallone's judo instructor as this guy, Craig Sheffer as this police officer, MTV's Dan Cortez as the lounge singer and one of the cryo guards, and a barely visible Jack Black as one of the scraps. There was also a subplot involving Spartan's daughter, played by Elizabeth Ruscio, who it turned out was older than him in the future and living with the scraps, but it was removed after bad test screenings, leaving a frustrating loose end in the final cut of the film, and a bizarre misconception that a lot of audiences apparently have, where they think Huxley is supposed to be John Spartan's daughter. And that's weird, because of the sex scene. Hey guys, I want to let you know that I was recently a guest on the Oh Boy, a Time Travel podcast to talk about this movie. So, if you want to know more of my unfiltered opinions about Demolition Man, go check it out after this video. Anyway, let's get back to it. After a couple of delays, including 9 days for Stallone to recover from a pinched shoulder vein, principal photography started in mid-February 1993. Location shooting was done in and around Orange County, California, including at Hughes Aircraft in El Segundo, a San Diego trolley station, the Pacific Design Center, the LA Convention Center, the Imperial Highway, And finally, the Los Angeles Water and Power Building, which, after a particularly spectacular stunt involving a 250-foot bungee jump off a Chinook helicopter, they demolished for the film's opening sequence. For the interior sets, most notably the cryo chamber set, they hired James Bond veteran Ken Adam, and the music was composed by Elliot Goldenthal, fresh off his work on Alien 3. The movie went way over budget, both in time and money, but Silver had so much pull with Warner Brothers that he was allowed to get away with it with their blessing, though a studio intermediary was hired to keep an eye on things. Originally only scheduled for 72 days, principal photography actually lasted for 112 days, not counting reshoots. As such, most of the crew had to be replaced mid-filming as they were contractually obligated to other productions, and Silver famously had to hire 5 different assistant directors, which may or may not be a record. The budget then ballooned to at least $65 million, but with an extensive marketing campaign, that budget climbed a lot closer to $100 million. Speaking of the marketing, the script initially called for Burger King to be the victor in the so-called franchise wars, but the fast food chain wasn't interested, nor was McDonald's. Taco Bell, though, was enthusiastic about the idea and even changed their logo to coincide with the release of the movie. Personally, I think Taco Bell is a better and funnier choice anyway, so maybe fate knew what it was doing. Unfortunately, Taco Bell wasn't as well known outside the US, so for the international cut of the movie, another PepsiCo-owned company, Pizza Hut, was edited in to replace it.
I would like you to accompany me to Pizza Hut.
The so-called Pizza Hut cut of the film was also used for television broadcasts. Demolition Man released on October 8, 1993 to mixed reviews. Despite a strong opening weekend, it only grossed $58 million domestically, but it managed to rake in a little over $100 million internationally. It was generally considered a minor success, though not enough of one to greenlight a planned sequel or usher in a new age of Joel Silver-style action movies. Nevertheless, it has maintained an enormous cultural footprint and is still referenced in pop culture today, with even people who've never seen it well aware of things like the 3 seashells.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells.
It's also managed to maintain relevance, something exceptionally rare for a 90s sci-fi action flick. And in the pandemic era, it was rediscovered for its prescient use of social distancing and exaggerated political correctness in the vein of so-called cancel culture. Without getting too political, the story does serve as a rallying cry for centrism against the competing forces of authoritarianism and anarchy, and it also stands as a satirical reflection of where society has come in the years since, or where it could still go in the future. But don't get confused. At its heart, this movie isn't trying to be political. Rather, it's trying to get people to lighten up and enjoy the kind of over-the-top action movie that was just starting to become too problematic to make. The reason it's stayed popular into the 21st century is it wants to be unapologetically entertaining, and let's face it, we could all stand to take that stick out of our backsides from time to time. Given the name I've applied to this channel and the general attitude I've cultivated over the last few years, it should come as no surprise to anyone that I absolutely love this movie and consider it a sci-fi classic. I appreciate the almost mindless nature of the action, combined with a thick layer of cheeky satire, and everybody on screen appears to be having a good time. Well, except for Nigel Hawthorne, but that works for his character. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Which do you prefer, Last Action Hero or Demolition Man? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to demolish those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll see what happens when you're more concerned with your fiancé's body than with her brain, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
This is the rat burger. Not bad.